Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today in celebration of one of the greats. This is the M60 belt-fed machine gun, or at least something like it. This is the modernization, actually, of the original Pig from way back in Nam, the Rambo Special. This thing is actually more so circa early 2000s, and it isn't even the newest iteration of the M60 platform. And that makes it really cool. We're going to talk about it today. We're going to go through your gun 101, the who, what, when, where, and why, and a few other tidbits to make you, to get you just enough informed to be dangerous with the M60. And the other really cool thing about the M60, the ubiquitous American machine gun from back in the day, is that, as I kind of already said it, it's continued to see development on American soil, much like the ubiquitous small arm from American history. Might get a little hate for saying that and for bumping the stock on this beautiful Colt SP1. This thing is a beaut. And this is kind of the original AR-15, though all of you pretty much know now, they don't really look like this anymore. There's been a ton of development and progress over the last 50 years on those 50, 60 plus years on the AR-15, M16 platform, M4 platform. And nowadays, they look a lot more like any one of these beautiful things, like this ADM UIC Mod 2 beauty. This thing just is coming out. This is going to be my next gun of the week, by the way. Love this thing. Still banging stuff around here. Sorry, guys. But I would compare, that's kind of actually how I would look at the M60. This thing saw its initial development after World War II. 1952 to 1957 were the development years of the M60. That is a heckin' long time ago. Not as heckin' long as the M2 Browning, which is like a turn of the 20th century, but still a friggin' long time, and it still does see service to this day, with the M60 E6 version seeing service with the Danish military. Really, really cool stuff. But I digress. What we're talking about here today, I'm going to give you guys a bit of the lowdown on this thing, the features, the specs, some history, what other cool guns this thing was influenced by or was designed based on. We'll talk about some of the pros and the cons and how the various development of this thing and its future variations, of this being one of them, sought to overcome some of those. I'll talk about this wall, in here eventually at some point as well. I'll mention something about the next time I'm going to crack that safe open as well, which is going to be really, really soon. And then for those of you interested in the nitty-gritty, dirty, nerdy details, I'll show you guys this thing all broken down on the table here. I'll go through all the components, basically that comprise this beautiful M60. I'll talk about a few other unique aspects of this one because, spoiler alert and a bit of a buzzkill, this is semi-automatic only. Yes, that sucks. Yes, I just lost 3/4 of the audience, but that's okay. This is a really cool unit. There are lots of people that do want to enjoy an M60 and are fine with it being one blast per trigger pull, whether it's due to their laws of their state, their country, whatever, or you just don't want to cough up 40 to 70 grand for a legit transferable. This thing is very true to the original. In fact, all this kit, the whole Mk43 Mod1 kit, this is a Mk43 Mod1, by the way, which is a Navy version of the M60. Again, this came about in this current one with the top rail and the side rails. That's kind of early 2000s. But that whole kit, all this kit will fit on a traditional M60. They'll upgrade your M60 per se. Just the internal components, there's a couple small changes that prevent you from dropping the full auto goodness into this guy over here. So we'll touch on that. And then if you guys are really still wanting to learn more about the M60, I've got a couple great resources on here, YouTube. Another great video done by a great YouTuber and a fantastic channel that dives deep into the M60, a bunch of its different iterations and versions, all the nitty-gritty details of the top cover disassembly, all the crazy stuff going on in there. Great resource. I'll share that at the end. Okay, so jumping into this thing, the M60 was based primarily on two firearms. The Mk43, that's kind of more well-known, the Machine and Gewehr 42, which this is an Mk34. This was, again, a recent gun of the week that I did, so we've got the full video series on that, shooting disassembly and overview. This was a German general-purpose machine gun just before World War II. It was made throughout the World War II as well. It was made in tandem with the Mk42, which was kind of meant to replace, but really just built alongside it. It was a little faster to make, didn't need all the crazy extensive milling or high-end steel. But that's details that I shared in that other video. Anyways, the Mk42, very similar to this. I'll have one before too much longer. That led, or at least some elements of it, like the feeding mechanism, the top cover, the quick change barrel, that led directly to design elements of the M60. The other gun was also German, also had a 42 in the name. It was the FG42, known as the Fallschirmjägergewehr, and that was translated into the paratrooper rifle Model 42. Now you see that design influence is right back in here, how it's kind of got this mono stock. A lot of the action components, internals are in the stock itself, designating this as actually kind of a semi-bullpup design. Really interesting. And I have here a TAR-21 for your viewing pleasure. We can kind of just see how similar that kind of is. Now, of course, we don't have the actual action behind the trigger group. That's not the case. In this case, the trigger is right here and the action is right here. So it's conventional, but a lot of the feeding mechanism and all the stuff that's going on is located back here. And that kind of, well, I read it on Google and I thought it was interesting. So there, quick disclaimer. So that's your design details. Specs, this thing was anywhere from 20 to 25 pounds, depending on how it was kitted out or which version it was. They tended to get lighter as they went on in time. Fire rates for these things were between 500 and 650 rounds per minute, again, depending on the version. Now, again, this is a belt-fed system. It runs with these M13 disintegrating links, so each time you shoot, this thing pops off, separates, this thing falls to the ground, and you get the next one in, versus a solid link belt like the one that uses in the MG34 and MG42, where these entire belts are basically chained together in 50-round segments. Now, whereas the MG34 and MG42 were short recoil operated guns, this is actually a gas-operated short stroke piston. And therein lies one of the fallbacks of the gun, but we'll get into that in when I talk about fallbacks in general. Again, borrowing from the MG42, the M60 was developed with mass production in mind. It has a stamped steel receiver at its core. There are additional rails, derivative and whatnot attached inside of that. That's affixed to this front trunnion, which is kind of the heart of the thing. And then everything pretty much just plugs and plays into that system, which is really cool because that's what's largely been unchanged since the original design. All these other modernizations are actually kit that just plugs and plays with the system, which is actually really cool. You can take an off-the-shelf back in NOM M60, buy the current E6 kit from US Ordnance, the guys who are still making these things in the United States and providing them to the Danish military, and you can basically just upgrade your thing, give it a 60-year facelift, and there you go. And that's really freaking cool. And again, that's kind of what you could do with a AR-15 from back in the day. You got your original receiver kit. I mean, obviously you might want a railed top cover, so you might not want the carry handle gang. But realistically, you could plug and play a lot of the components on there and get it looking very similar to one of those beauties over there. Now, with military use in mind, this was typically a crew serve weapon. You'd mainly have your guy running around with the gun. You'd have a spare assisting gunner with extra ammo and spare barrels to swap out. These were designed to be used within like 1,100, 1,200 meter range, and they found that five-round bursts around there were the most effective. The gun was seen as quite highly controllable with only a 5-round burst. Again, the chug-a-lug cycle rate of around 600 RPM made this thing pretty easy to stay on target, and yeah, you weren't, Hitler's buzzsaw, the MG42, at friggin' like 1,500 RPM, but you were still cooking around and laying a lot of firepower pretty accurately. The gun featured a shoulder thing that goes up, otherwise known as a barrel shroud, for assisting gunners keeping the thing affixed around their shoulder. This one now has a top grail, so you can mount an optic on it, which is a really nice upgrade. We got rails on the sides as well for lasers, lights, things like that. It's a side charge platform, non-reciprocating. The original obviously fires from an open bolt, a machine gun. The guns were very simple to operate. I kind of covered that more in the how to shoot the video. Basically, a full auto gun would be shooting from the open bolt. So you just crank this thing back and then you open your top cover, put your belt of ammunition on there, close your top cover, and you're hot and ready to go. The semi-automatic is a little bit different because it fires from the closed bolt, but I went in that in depth in the shooting video, so I don't need to cover that again here. So also these little nubs installed here from the factory. This is just to mount the M60 into a variety of mounts and pedestals for different applications, whether it's a door gunner M60D configuration, which is the ubiquitous door gunner reference from the Hueys in NOM. But these things had the cradle mounts for Jeeps and tanks and lots of other stuff as well. They were, again, pretty widely used for a while there. Forward of that, we have a very handy-dandy barrel latch mechanism. You basically just push forward on this little spring-loaded detent back here, flip up this latch, and that would release your barrel. Now, my bolt is closed. It's home. The bolt is secured inside the barrel extension, so it's not going anywhere. I can't pull this off. But this is a very fast and effective barrel change method. Literally just that, and you're boom. The handle is affixed to the barrel in the later versions. That wasn't the case in the original E60, which was one of its drawbacks. But it makes it much simpler to change than, say, an original MG34 or later MG42 barrel. Thankfully, they also got their act together and got the bipod off the barrel and onto just the front end of the receiver here with the handguard. That way, when you're carrying extra barrels, you're also not carrying extra bipods, just bumbling along with you, taking up extra weight. Now, this is a long barrel version. You can just pop in the little standard length or the shorty commando barrels as well. Commando barrels look super sexy. And just about all the barrels have been stellite lined, which is just a great durability enhancement. You definitely minimize or mitigate that throat erosion from just cooking these things. That was actually an upgrade that a lot of the M2s went to later in the day as well. Now, the gas system is located right here. It's attached to the barrel, and the originals did not feature any kind of gas regulation, which really sucks. And that's something that you kind of saw in a lot of the older guns, like the ZB30s, the Bren guns that later followed the ZB guns. Those had adjustable gas regulators, and that was good because that meant in the field, when the guys were running the gun was getting more dirty or fouled up, the gunners could just on the fly crank up the gas, put more energy into the system, and just power on through. That would have actually been especially important with the original M60 top covers, which weren't as strong. The M60 definitely had a little bit of trouble chugging along when you had a big 100-round belt dangling off the side of the gun. You definitely wanted to have an ammo carrier underneath it, or the big crazy shoot system like you saw in Predator. Yes, those things do actually exist. They're friggin' cool. And my buddy Richard, hashtag carry handle all the things, has one. And I think I need to borrow that at some point in time. But again, that top cover is powered by the cycling of the bolt, which all comes down to the gas put into the system. So they didn't give you an adjustable gas regulator from the start, and that was too bad. That was one of the shortcomings of this thing, because otherwise the only way to really get the gun running again, unless you could swap out the barrel and get a fresh, gas piston, but that doesn't help you over here if the rest of your gun is gummed up over here. Really, the only other remedy was to just take the gun back, field strip it, clean it out, scrape out the gas piston, get all the carbon crap out of there and the other jungle muck, whatever. Get it cleaned up, get it back in action. Versus just on the fly, flipping a dial in the field and just cranking up the gas. Pedal to the metal, man. It's useful, and there's a reason why most modern guns, such as this Fight Light MCR, have several different settings. Also, most of the guns now are set up to fire suppressed as well. It's pretty commonplace nowadays, so you'll have your suppressed settings as well and your unsuppressed, but usually a fouled setting as well. Guys, let's keep this thing rolling along. Let's go through the variants now. So again, kicking things off, 1957, you have the M60, the original, the E1. That was the full-on dude with the big vented ribbed kind of handguard and the bipod stuck to this massively long barrel. You also have this really stubby kind of little grip that was kind of just not good. And then in the 80s, again, because a lot of commandos were cutting down the barrels, things like that, they realized we should make this thing lighter. So they came out with the E3. Again, not before they did the M60D configuration, which was your door gunner. A couple other random variations for different vehicle mounts, things like that, aircraft, stuff like that. But in terms of crew serve guns, the next one was the E3. That was lightweight, and unfortunately it suffered from a few problems. Being so lightweight, durability, reliability suffered a little bit in the field, so you had your E4. This is a version of the E4. There was the E4 Mod O that had this big, chunky polymer grip, kind of polymer forend as well. And then when they did the Mod 1, which is also, the Navy picked up the Mk43. There was a Mk43 Mod O, which was that original one that was developed in the 90s. And then the Mod 1 came into service again with these more railed accessories, things like that. That was in the early 2000s. That led to the E6, which was developed a short time after that. Again, without sounding like a broken record, that is the one that is still going to this day with the Danes. And hopefully one day, not too far away, me. Now guys, quick overview on the wall. This is a wall by Gallotech. I love their stuff. I have lots of it around the room. We're going to be expanding the room soon over onto this side, which currently is kind of a mess. We're getting another Rhino Metal safe over there, some more Gallotech panels. It's going to be awesome. As I mentioned, we're going to crack open this safe real soon. That'll be a video actually probably following this one. We're going to do an updated safe tour of, well, what's behind here, which is lots of cool stuff. Shortly following that, or well, at least the next Gun of the Week series, which again is that beautiful ADM rifle over there, we're going to do a belt-fed basics. I'm going to go through all these guns over here, give you a bit of the rundown, some history on belt feds, why they're cool, and some of the modernizations like this Fight Light MCR that's both mag fed, 100 round surefire here, and belt fed. It's pretty cool the way this thing works. I love this thing. And again, this upper drops onto a mil spec lower, AR-15 or M16. You know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, stay tuned for those things. Now we're going to jump into, again, those nitty-gritty, nerdy-dirty details. And for the guys that really want to know the extra things, that's that. Otherwise, guys, if you enjoy my content, I have 5 things for you. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram at arm.and.gun. I post there daily, lots of cool stuff, lots of cool behind-the-scenes stories and videos. Get to see behind that big old safe door a little more often. I open some of the cool drawers on this unit here as well. You can see they hide a number of fun things. If you guys want to see more about that, that was a video. Ultimate Gun Room Part 2, storing your guns and gear in a badass tool chest. That was that video. Went through this entire thing, all the cool alternative gun-inspired uses for it. But again, lots of stuff's kind of on the daily on my Instagram. You can also check out all the affiliate links below. We got things like HRT Tactical, we've got Black Arch Holster, lots more cool stuff. Check it out. If you do like the gear, you can buy through those links. It does support the channel. Otherwise, guys, let's get into it, and then let's get the heck out of here. All right, guys, flying by, giving you guys the overall view of all of the components of the M60. Most of them anyways. I did do some of the really small things like the barrel catch mechanism and the sight and things like that. But for the most part, we've got it all broken down here. I'm gonna give you a quick rundown on each component. If you guys want to see the actual disassembly process, that was the previous video. So, kicking things up off top with the top cover. This is the with the feed pawl mechanism. That's what basically runs the gun. That's what runs the ammunition and feeds the pig. Down from that, we have the operating rod. Again, this is a semi-automatic only version. It's been all milled down there. We'll go through all the semi-automatic specific components in a little bit. We have the drive rod spring, and then this is the drive rod. This is the buffer assembly. This is a little cross yoke pin. That's actually the first step to taking down the M60. Here we have your buffer, or your buttstock assembly. This is actually, well, the gun itself, the heart of the gun, the body of the gun. It's the initial chassis and then the rails that go in there. Your front trunnion is this chunk up here. And we have your handguard and your bipod mechanism, which I haven't pulled apart. I could do that a little bit further, but I didn't feel it was necessary for the video here. Now we got your trigger assembly. This is again is an E4 trigger assembly, but it's semi-automatic. I've got an E6 grip on here. A little bit different with that little sear bar sticking out of there. Again, we'll talk about that more in a second. This is your 2-piece cross pin set that retains your trigger mechanism to the body of the firearm. This is another 2-piece pin set, and that's what retains your feed tray and top cover to the gun itself as well, up through here. This is your feed tray, and then this is your barrel with the piston system attached. Pretty cool. That's your M60 at a glance. Also, your bolt, your little cam guide that runs the top cover. That thing slides in here and moves this as the bolt runs back and forth. And your spring-loaded firing pin. This is unique to the semi-automatic models. It's a little more complicated because of it being semi-automatic, firing on a closed bolt. But otherwise, with the exception of very few components, this is essentially a real deal M60. At least as far as it can be, you know, still firing semi-automatic. All right, so specifically the semi-automatic components in this thing. One of the most obvious things is the operating rod here. There's no sear notches on the bottom. This has all been milled smooth so that there's no way to make this work with an actual sear on a gun and try and bypass the trigger mechanism. There's also been a little bit of stuff done to the tower here. Most of that has been done so that so that only these parts fit into this receiver. This receiver actually has thicker inside rails so that they don't just readily accept the full auto, op rod and bolt. This guy is going to be sized slightly differently as well, again, to fit inside these thicker rails. I don't know the nitty-gritty details of what a full auto bolt looks like. Check out beltfeds.com for that. His YouTube channel, he gets pretty nitty-gritty in some of those details. But this one has been set up to accommodate, of course, the semi-automatic firing pin spring, which clips in back there. And the way this mechanism works is actually kind of cool. And actually fittingly, Ian from Forgotten Weapons posted the China Lake gun recently. That's the pump action 40 mil grenade launcher, basically the pump action version of the M79 bloop tube. And when he's pulling it apart and showing the way it worked, there's actually an interesting similarity to how this semi-automatic system works. And it has to do with this sear bar and this little sear trip up here and the way they engage and interact. So you guys can see when I pull the trigger, it rocks this down. This would normally be the sear in the full auto gun. You'd pull that back, it would drop the sear against the opera would fly back and forth, and you'd be you'd be smiling. But this guy here, well, I'm still smiling, just, you know, intermittently. But when you pull this down, it still works the same. It mechanically pulls down this this little sear bar, and that sear connects in this little flap right there. And when that pulls down, holy shit! So that's never happened before. I now need to find that part. Thankfully, it's not sticking in my wall. Oh well, yeah, so I'm gonna also have fun recocking that to get that back into the gun. But basically, while we're here, that's how this thing worked. It's pretty cool. This little lever right here, and you pull that, cranks that little lever down, that releases, obviously, the firing pin, and fire it out of there. Holy cow, that was fun. Anyways, I'm gonna find that, and we're gonna be back. Actually, it was just basically at my feet on the floor. There's your firing pin, we're all good. Okay, so this is pretty cool the way this works. This little graduated sloped part there, and then it rests against there. When you pull this little thing, there's a little interrupted hole in there. You can just see, that's how that mechanism works. I don't know if you can really see or not, but it's basically just a small ring that's locking that in there. And there we go. Now it's back in there. That's how she works. Pretty cool. Pretty darn cool. And that flies out. This is basically a ballistic knife. If this was a sharpened tip, this would basically be a ballistic knife, which is pretty cool and definitely not legal in Canada, but it's not actually a ballistic knife, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, there we go. This is a little bit tricky. Definitely don't point that at yourself while you're doing that, but we're recocked, and this is crazy. This is really cool. This is like a little, it's like a little mini dart thing. I don't know. Also a really expensive part in a really cool gun, but nonetheless, it's kind of cool. I'm having a little bit of fun with that. So this is a little bit like, this is the extended bonus edition of this video. If you guys are watching this, you're the super fans, and I love you. Anyways, that's going to conclude the semi-automatic-ness of this M60. Let's get back into the rest of the gun. Ladies, gents, I hope you enjoyed the video. That's going to be it for me tonight. You guys worked with me there through all of the internals of this thing, and appreciated those cool elements that make this thing semi-automatic. And yeah, it kind of sucks, but it's not as bad as not having one at all. Anyways, guys, with that, I'll catch you in the next one. Actually, on that note, I'm moving on from this thing. This thing is not going to be here for much longer. It has found itself a new home, and they are patiently waiting while I am finishing up this YouTube video series before sending it off. So I'm now going to be hunting for a real deal and then trying to get the E6 kit up from US Ordnance. Might be a little trickier than I want to, but I just need to find an original gun no matter what, and I can always upgrade it. So that's going to be a fun hunt now, getting that through a local company that has extended their licensing for me to do cool stuff on this channel. So much gratitude to them, and a quick shout out to Wolverine Supplies, who I originally got this thing from. They imported it up here to Canada, and they sat idly by for like a year while I chipped away making monthly payments on this big, beautiful bastard. Anyways, guys, that's it. Thanks a ton. I love you. Arm and Gun, out. And I'm back because I forgot to give you those resources if you want to learn more about the M60. Also, there's the safe for those of you who have stood by me all this time. More on that soon. If you guys want to learn more about the M60 machine gun, James Reeves of TFBTV just shot the literal shit out of an original OG M60 machine gun. He went through a lot of great stuff. He even talked about the trials when this thing faced off against the FN Mag, or the 240. And how even though the 241, it kind of didn't totally, there was some stuff that went on. Anyways, check that out if you want to learn more about that. There's also the awesome epic slow-mo video that Larry Vickers did, featuring the E6 conversion, the most modern one, that Danish gold. And that was super sick. Some slow-mo footage, just typical Larry Vickers fashion. It's probably 60% of the reason I bought an M60 in the first place. It's just epic watching the thing cycle, the brass getting chucked out, this thing pooping out links. It's just fan-friggin-tastic. And then my all-time favorite, beltfeds.com, and that's actually a YouTube channel. It's a website as well, but Aaron runs a YouTube channel and he goes through a ton of fantastic information in depth on all the various M60 configurations. He's got some good M2 stuff on there, some other machine guns, just a lot of great content, shooting a lot of full auto stuff as well. It's fantastic. Definitely do yourself a favor and check it out. Thanks a ton, guys.